Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to get into some really interesting psychology.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be looking at the psychology behind creating buyer urgency,
Yes.
specifically in real estate.
It's fascinating.
It is, and I think it's something that everyone listening can benefit from.
Absolutely.
Whether you are the buyer or the seller,
Yeah.
understanding these tactics can give you an edge.
Yeah.
And I think what was so interesting about the source material that we read to prep for this is that it's not about being pushy.
Right.
It's not about like forcing people into making a decision.
No.
It's about helping buyers recognize a valuable opportunity.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is this whole concept of analysis paralysis.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever experienced that?
All the time.
So with so many choices available, buyers often become overwhelmed and they struggle to make a decision.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think these days, choosing anything, even like something simple to buy online,
Right.
you can turn into like a whole research project.
It is.
But how does this relate specifically to real estate?
Well, in a fast-paced market, hesitating can mean missing out on that perfect property.
Oh, right.
And that's where creating a sense of urgency comes in.
Okay.
It's about helping buyers recognize a valuable opportunity when they see it, and this leads them to act decisively and avoid potential regret.
So it's a win-win. It's helping the buyer get what they want.
Absolutely.
And it's also helping agents, close deals more quickly.
Exactly. It helps everyone.
Yeah. And the source material we read highlighted 5 key strategies for creating this sense of urgency.
Yes.
And the first one that really jumped out at me was scarcity.
Yes, scarcity is a classic tactic.
Yeah.
It plays on our innate fear of missing out, or as the kids say these days, FOMO.
Right.
Think about those limited edition products or those exclusive deals.
Yeah.
They create a sense of desire and urgency because we perceive them as more valuable when they're scarce.
It's like this psychological equivalent of supply and demand.
Exactly.
The less there is of something, the more we want it. But how do you translate that concept of scarcity into an actual real estate context?
Okay, so imagine you're a buyer and you're looking for a home in a competitive market.
Okay.
And you hear that there are only 2 homes left in your desired price range and neighborhood.
Okay.
Suddenly those homes become much more appealing, right?
Yeah. You're like, oh, wow.
That's scarcity in action.
Yeah. It creates a sense of competition.
Absolutely.
Okay. So scarcity is one tactic. What's next on the list?
Deadlines.
Okay.
Deadlines introduce a time pressure element that can be very effective in motivating buyers.
That's interesting because deadlines, I think, sometimes can feel a little bit pushy.
Yeah.
But I can see how, when used correctly, they can actually be helpful for the buyer.
It's all about framing, you see.
Okay.
Think about it from the buyer's perspective. Let's say you're interested in a property, but you're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Then your agent tells you that all offers are being reviewed tomorrow at 5 p.m.
Uh-huh.
That deadline creates a sense of urgency, prompting you to make a decision.
So instead of feeling pressured, it's more like a helpful nudge to overcome maybe that indecision.
Precisely. Deadlines tap into our aversion to loss.
Okay.
We're more motivated to avoid missing out than we are to gain something new.
Interesting.
So in the real estate context, it's not just about wanting that particular house. It's about not wanting to lose the opportunity to get it.
So you're shifting the focus from potential gain to potential loss.
Exactly.
It's a subtle but powerful distinction.
It is.
All right, so we've got scarcity, we've got deadlines. What else is in the toolbox for creating buyer urgency?
Market data.
Ooh, okay.
Using facts and figures can be very persuasive.
So this is where we move from the sort of emotional triggers to something more rational.
Exactly. Instead of relying solely on those emotional appeals, using market data provides that concrete evidence to support the need for urgency.
So instead of just saying, now's a good time to buy, you're going to hit them with the data. The home prices in this area have increased by 10% in the past 6 months.
Yes, exactly. Data like that provides external validation. It removes that guesswork and shows buyers that their instincts are backed by evidence, further fueling that sense of urgency.
Right, so you're not just telling them, you're showing them.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's go back to the emotional side of things.
Okay.
Our source material also mentioned emotional triggers. What exactly does that mean?
It's about connecting with the buyer on a deeper level, helping them envision their future in the home.
Okay.
Instead of just listing features, you're painting a picture of what their life could be like in that space.
Right, instead of saying, this kitchen has granite countertops and stainless steel appliances,
Right.
you might say something like, imagine hosting family holidays in this beautiful, spacious kitchen. creating memories that will last a lifetime.
Exactly. It's about tapping into their aspirations and helping them see how this property can help them achieve their dreams.
So you're helping them write their own happy ending to the story?
Precise.
Okay, so we've covered scarcity deadlines, market data, emotional triggers. What is the fifth and final strategy for creating buyer urgency?
Social proof.
Social proof.
Okay. People are inherently social creatures. We look to others for cues on how to behave, especially in situations where we're unsure.
Right, it's like that saying, if everyone else is doing it, it must be the right thing to do.
Exactly.
But how does that apply to buying a house?
Okay, so think about it this way. You're considering a property, but you're on the fence.
Yeah.
Then your agent mentions they've already received 2 other offers on the house.
Okay.
Suddenly, your perception of the property changes.
It's like, oh, if other people see the value in this, maybe I'm missing something.
Exactly.
So the fact that other people are interested actually validates your own interest.
Yes.
And creates a sense of urgency, like, I got to get in there before I miss out.
Social proof leverages the power of conformity, and it creates a sense of competition.
Okay.
It's a subtle but very effective way to nudge buyers towards making that decision.
So we've got these 5 powerful strategies: scarcity deadlines, market data, emotional triggers, and social proof.
Yes.
It's fascinating to see how they all tap into different aspects of human psychology.
It is.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just throwing these tactics around randomly.
You're absolutely right. It's not about manipulation.
Okay.
It's about understanding the buyer's needs and using these strategies ethically and effectively to guide them towards a decision that's in their best interest.
Right. So how do you walk that fine line between motivating someone and being overly pushy?
Oh, that's a great question.
I'm ready to dive into the how of all of this. But first, a quick word from our sponsors.
Okay. So we are back and ready to tackle the how of creating buyer urgency.
Yes.
We've got these 5 powerful strategies, but I imagine there's a real art to using them effectively and ethically.
Absolutely. It's not about manipulation or using pressure tactics. It's about guiding buyers towards a decision that genuinely aligns with their needs and aspirations. And a big part of that is building trust through transparency. Okay, so no smoke and mirrors, just being upfront and honest about everything.
Precisely. Buyers can spot a sales pitch a mile away, and that can instantly erode trust. So instead, focus on open and honest communication, share all the relevant information, even the things that might not necessarily paint the property in the most flattering light.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people, especially in sales roles, are taught to just highlight the positives.
Right.
But you're saying that being upfront about maybe even potential downsides can actually build trust.
Absolutely. It shows that you're not just trying to close a deal. You're genuinely invested in helping them make the best decision, even if that means walking away from this particular property.
That makes a lot of sense. So transparency is key. What else can agents do to communicate effectively without coming across as pushy?
Asking the right questions is crucial. Instead of launching into a sales pitch, start by understanding the buyer's needs, their motivations, and their concerns.
Okay.
What are their must-haves? What are their deal breakers? What are they hesitant about?
So it's about putting yourself in their shoes, really listening to what they're saying,
Yes.
not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Precisely. And once you understand their perspective, you can tailor your communication and frame that urgency in a way that feels helpful and supportive, not manipulative.
Can you give us an example of how that might sound in a real-life situation?
Sure. Let's say a buyer is hesitant about making an offer because they're concerned about the property's proximity to a busy road.
Okay.
Instead of dismissing their concern or trying to downplay it, you acknowledge it and then reframe the urgency in a way that addresses their specific concern.
So instead of saying, don't worry about the traffic, that's not that bad.
Right.
You might say something like, I understand your concern about the road noise. It's something to consider. However, homes in this neighborhood that offer this level of privacy and yard space are rare, and they tend to sell very quickly.
Exactly. You're acknowledging their concern while also highlighting the unique value proposition of the property and the potential risk of missing out if they delay their decision.
That's a much more nuanced approach than just saying, you better hurry up before someone else snatches it up.
Precisely. It's about guiding them toward a decision that's right for them, not pressuring them into something they'll regret later. And another key element of communicating effectively is staying positive.
Okay, that seems pretty straightforward. But how do you stay positive when you're dealing with a hesitant buyer in a competitive market?
Yeah.
It must be tempting to focus on, the potential downsides of waiting.
It's definitely a balancing act, but instead of saying things like, if you don't act now, you'll probably miss out, You focus on the positive aspects of making a timely decision.
So instead of emphasizing what they stand to lose, you highlight what they stand to gain by acting decisively.
Precisely, you might say something like, imagine how great it would feel to secure this home before the weekend rush of showings. You could relax, knowing that you found your dream home, and avoid the stress of competing with other offers.
That's a much more appealing and encouraging way to frame the situation. It shifts the focus from fear and scarcity to excitement and opportunity.
Exactly. It's about helping them envision the positive outcomes of acting quickly, which can be a powerful motivator.
So we've talked about transparency, asking the right questions, framing urgency as helpful advice, and staying positive. Are there any other communication tips that can help agents strike that delicate balance between motivating buyers and being overly pushy?
There's one more tactic we haven't touched on yet, storytelling.
Oh, right. Our source material mentioned that.
Yeah.
It's like instead of just stating facts or figures, you're weaving them into a compelling narrative. But how would you use storytelling to create a sense of urgency in real estate?
Imagine you're working with a buyer who's on the fence about making an offer.
Okay.
They like the property, but they're hesitant to commit. Instead of just reiterating the features or market data, you could share a story about a previous client who was in a similar situation.
So you could tell them about a buyer who hesitated, missed out on their dream home, and ended up settling for a property they weren't as excited about.
Exactly. Or conversely, you could tell a story about a buyer who acted decisively, secured a great property, and has been living happily ever after in their dream home.
Okay.
Stories like that can be incredibly persuasive because they tap into our emotions and make the information more real and relatable.
It's like those cautionary tales we heard as kids, but for grown-up decisions.
Exactly.
Instead of just saying act fast, you're providing them with a real-life example of why it matters.
Precisely. And it doesn't always have to be your own anecdotes. You
Same.
can also encourage buyers to reflect on their own experiences or those of people they know.
You mean ask them if they've ever missed out on something because they hesitated? Or if they know anyone who has a buyer's remorse story?
Exactly.
That's a great idea. It brings the concept of urgency closer to home and makes it more personal.
Exactly. And sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we tell ourselves.
Okay.
You can encourage buyers to envision their future in the home and then contrast that with the potential disappointment of missing out.
So it's about helping them connect the dots between their aspirations,
Yes.
the opportunity in front of them,
Right.
and the potential consequences of inaction.
Exactly.
That's a powerful combination. But I'm curious, is there ever a time when creating a sense of urgency might backfire? What if a buyer feels pressured and walks away?
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of reading the situation and adapting your approach accordingly. Not all buyers respond to urgency in the same way. Some thrive on it, while others feel overwhelmed.
So it's about being perceptive, understanding the individual buyer's personality and communication style.
Exactly.
You wouldn't use the same approach with someone who's naturally decisive
Right.
as you would with someone who's more cautious and analytical.
Exactly. It's all about building rapport, understanding their motivations, and tailoring your communication to their specific needs. And remember, building trust is paramount. If a buyer senses that you're being manipulative or insincere, they'll likely disengage.
That makes sense. So it's not just about mastering these tactics. It's about using them ethically and genuinely to guide buyers toward a decision that's right for them. But, this conversation about urgency in real estate makes me think about something else. Is that
Yeah.
this whole conversation about creating urgency in real estate makes me think about how these same principles could apply to other areas of life.
Oh, interesting.
Like, what about achieving our own personal goals?
Yeah, that's a fascinating connection. I hadn't really thought about it in that context, but it makes perfect sense. We often hesitate to pursue our dreams.
Right.
We tell ourselves we'll get to them someday when the time is right.
Oh, yes, someday.
Right.
I'm totally guilty of that. I have a whole list of someday projects
Yeah,
that never seem to make it to the today list.
it's a common trap. We let fear or procrastination or just the busyness of life hold us back from taking action on the things that truly matter to us.
Absolutely. But what if we applied some of these urgency tactics to our own personal goals?
Right. What if we did?
So are you suggesting like we give ourselves deadlines for writing that novel
Yeah.
or signing up for that marathon?
Sure.
Should we create a sense of scarcity around our dreams? Like if I don't do this now, I'll miss my chance forever.
Not necessarily ultimatums, but perhaps a gentle nudge in the right direction.
Okay.
Creating a sense of urgency, even in a self-directed way, can be a powerful motivator.
Okay.
It helps us overcome inertia and prioritize the things that we claim are important to us.
That's interesting. So instead of waiting for the perfect time or for motivation to magically strike,
Right.
we create our own momentum by injecting a little bit of urgency into the equation.
Exactly. Think about it. Deadlines have a way of focusing our attention and energy, and even a perceived sense of scarcity can make us value something more.
So if I'm struggling to find time to write, maybe I set a deadline for finishing a chapter,
Yeah,
or even just like a page a day.
sure.
Or if I'm, dreaming of traveling the world, maybe I start researching specific trips
Yeah.
and setting a date for when I want to book something.
It's like tricking myself into taking action. You're creating those external motivators that can help you overcome that internal resistance.
Right.
It's about harnessing the power of urgency, not as a source of pressure, but as a catalyst for action.
It's like we're borrowing those strategies from the world of sales and applying them to our own personal development.
Yeah, I love that.
But how do we find that right balance?
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to create so much urgency that I just feel completely overwhelmed or stressed.
That's a great point. It's all about finding what works for you. Experiment with different approaches. Maybe you start with small, achievable deadlines and gradually work your way up to those bigger goals.
And I imagine it's also important to be mindful of our own internal dialogue.
Oh, absolutely.
If we're constantly telling ourselves, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to do this,
Right.
that's not exactly creating a supportive environment for achieving our dreams.
Yeah. The way we talk to ourselves has a huge impact on our motivation and self-belief. If you're constantly putting yourself down or focusing on your limitations, it's going to be much harder to take action.
So along with these urgency tactics, we also need a healthy dose of self-compassion
Yes,
and encouragement. It's like being our own best cheerleader,
it is.
reminding ourselves that we're capable of amazing things if we just set our minds to it.
That's a perfect way to put it. We need to be both the coach and the cheerleader, pushing ourselves to grow while also celebrating our progress along the way. And, this whole conversation makes me realize that urgency isn't just about achieving specific outcomes.
Right.
It's also about living a more intentional and fulfilling life.
That's a beautiful thought. It's about being present, making the most of each day, and not letting opportunities pass us by because we're too hesitant or afraid to take action.
Exactly. It's about embracing the present moment and recognizing that time is a precious resource that shouldn't be wasted on indecision or procrastination.
Wow, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We started by exploring how to motivate buyers in real estate, and we've ended up with a whole new perspective on how to approach our own personal goals and live a more fulfilling life.
And it all comes back to that central theme of urgency, not as a source of pressure or anxiety, but as a catalyst for action growth and living in alignment with our values and aspirations.
So for our listeners out there, here's a little challenge. What's one dream or goal that you've been putting off? What's one small step you can take today to inject a little sense of urgency into that dream?
It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It could be as simple as setting a deadline, doing some research, or even just talking to someone about your goal. The important thing is to take action and move forward, even if it's just one small step at a time.
That's great advice. Well, that's a wrap for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of urgency, from the psychology of sales to the pursuit of our own personal dreams. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep taking action.